So, y'all, thanks for being here. I was just mentioning to our guests, we'll probably have people trickling through. There's like 3 events on campus today that are happening. And so I'm positive there will be people kind of trying to split their time among the 3 events. I am incredibly grateful for this opportunity. I can't even tell you. I had a nerd out moment, of course, when I heard that our guest was going to be available to do this, because I'm like, you have a cool job. And it took me back to days when I used to be like a soundboard guy, and I thought it was super cool at like 16 years old. And I was like, this is great. And obviously that's nothing compared to what Alexandria does. But I was just like, man, if I'd have known that you could make a career out of that, that would be cool. So our guest is somebody that I think if you even heard me talk about it in class, you go like, that's a cool job. Who would have thought? But Alexandria is an Emmy Award-winning audio engineer and is currently employed at Will Media as an associate producer. Previously, Alexandria spent 6 years at NASA's Johnson Space Center, and I have a student wearing NASA swag today just to connect. But in Houston, working as an audio engineer for live broadcast events with the International Space Station, and served as a producer of NASA's Houston We Have, a podcast. Alexandria has worked with clients such as, and I didn't realize when you sent this, I was like, oh wow, that's crazy. Such as the Prime Minister of Canada, Will Smith, Garth Brooks, the Vice President of the United States, and the Pope. So that is kind of every field you could imagine. You've hit the top names. In 2019, Alexandria won an Emmy Award for Best Interactive Programming for her work on NASA's SpaceX Demo 1 mission and NASA's prestigious Silver Achievement, and received NASA's prestigious Silver Achievement Medal. So, without any further delay, I'm going to introduce our guest, Alexandria Perryman. Thank you for being here. And that water is
All right, so before I dive into this that has really cool space pictures, I did want to give a little bit of my education background. So I went to Oak Ridge High School, graduated in 2012, and then after that I decided that I wanted to go off into the audio field, but I didn't want to play my instrument anymore. I didn't want to be a musician. I wanted to be the person who I felt had the real power, the ones at the concerts who's pumping up the audio faders, he was getting it out to the audience. I felt like that was a little bit more of a rush for me. So I went around and looked up different schools. I auditioned for Berklee College of Music, got in, decided that I did not want to live in Boston because I am a Texas girl and it is too cold. And then I went on to find Full Sail University in Winter Park, Florida, which was great because I didn't have to play an instrument to go in there. I can go straight into my field of learning how to mix audio. At that time, I wanted to be a mixing engineer, working in the studios, working with Beyonce or things like that. And so I went through college there. It was really great. It was really, really fast. There was no summer break. We had maybe a week off for the 4th of July, and that was about it, a week off for Christmas. So it was really fast paced. While I was in college, I slacked off a little bit after, because you turn 18, you're away from home. Literally, for me, I was states away from home, partying, hanging out with the cool kids around campus, end up getting on academic probation. But while I was on academic probation, I felt the switch. I started figuring out what it is that I could do to get those grades that I see my classmates getting. So I decided, I was like, I'm just gonna make friends with who I think is the smartest kid in the class. Not to cheat off of them, but to see their work habits. Okay, they're in the library, I'm going to the library. I don't know what they're doing in there, but I'm gonna find something to do. And it actually worked. From that, I ended up graduating with honors while also on academic probation. It's a wild story. So I got so my GPA was low, so I was technically still on academic probation while graduating. But my classes from that point on, I made in 90 and above. So I ended up getting a couple honors from certain teachers who gave me awards for my turnaround. And after that, I came back home to Houston, started working in a music studio, which is what I had dreamed of. I was actually doing what I wanted to do, worked with some really cool artists. and then realized I hated working in the music studio. I don't really like working hand in hand with artists. Goes along with saying never meet your heroes because, yeah, that's exactly how that turned out. And then so I left the music studio, started doing part-time AB work at different hotels. I was volunteering at my church, and that's when I came across the job at NASA, which, by the way, did not say NASA. I was a contract worker, so I had to contract. And I was extremely confused because the contract was based off in Virginia, but here I am in Texas. They didn't tell me the location when I was filling out the application, but I read what they were asking for me to do, and that's everything that I knew what to do. I filled out thousands of applications at like 2 o'clock in the morning. And I actually got a call from them 2 months later, and I didn't know what job this was for because I had filled out so many applications, and I had to go back and look, and I was like, I still don't know where I'm gonna be working at if I get this job. So I went in for an interview, and when I got there, it wasn't on NASA's campus, it was like off-site. And I walked in there and I saw all their NASA shirts, and I was like, oh no. They think that I'm the other type of engineer. Like, I'm not a rocket scientist. I don't know how to build rockets. I'm at the wrong place. And when I got there, they were asking me questions, audio questions. I was like, this is really strange. Like, you're NASA, but you're asking me audio questions. Like, what's going on here? And they finally told me like exactly what the job would entail. They actually quizzed me on signal flow and things like that I learned in school. I was just confused trying to correlate the two. And so I didn't hear back from them for like 2 weeks. I felt like it was going really well. And then I was just like, you know what? I might not have got it. I might not have got this job. They probably were looking for the other type of engineer who has a little bit of audio background in it. But then I get an offer letter in my email while I was in North Carolina on vacation. And I had to hurry up and get back to Texas. So going into the stuff that I did at NASA, so a bit of an overview. So I handled the live audio coming down from the space station and pushing out to NASA TV or NASA's YouTube channel that has like, you can go on NASA's YouTube channel and look at Earth views and hear the sounds from space of the astronauts working in space 24 hours. So I would handle that audio that goes out. I did not work 24 hours, but it felt like I did. This is the console that I worked on in the actual, what we call the ACR. So NASA is like the epitome of acronyms. Everything has an acronym. They change. Some of the acronyms are the same thing, but they have like 3 different acronyms. I don't know why, but this is basically the audio control room. And if you look, it's kind of dark, but past that is the PCR, the production control room. So those are the producers that are like switching the video feeds for you, and I'm handling the audio. Yes, that board is very intimidating. It's actually older than me, which I found out when it started breaking down. That's what we call a patch bay. And I don't know if you all have ever seen like old movies where they had like a phone bridge and they plug it in. That's basically what I was doing. I was taking in audio from one source, plugging it into another source, and getting it out on NASA TV. So I was pretty much, I like to call my job, I was the phone operator from space, basically. That's more gear that we used. More gear photos. Let's see. Okay, so this is the microphone that I would use to talk to folks out on NASA TV, talk to the astronauts in the space station before events. And if you notice, there's a giant dent in the front of that microphone. I did that. But I'll tell you why. So it was my very first event that I was supposed to be shadowing the other audio engineer on because I had just been there maybe 3 weeks. And he was just like, I want you to do the closeout for the show. And I was like, I don't think that's a great idea. Because I just got here and you want me to talk on NASA TV and to talk to the space station. I just push faders. Like, I don't want to talk to anybody. And so I was incredibly nervous. And I literally had like one line to say, but it didn't matter. All I had to just say was that was the end of the event, to let the astronauts know who can't see the video feed that we're done and we're closing out the event. So I'm super nervous. My hand is like shaking, holding the mic. I pull up the fader and I immediately drop the microphone with the fader up. So you hear this loud thud and I'm shaking. I grab the mic, I say my line super fast, and then I hurry up and pull down the fader, and I looked at my supervisor, who was dying laughing. Like, his face is extremely red, and he's like, "That's okay. It happens to the best of us." Apparently, it only happened to me. But I had got through that finally with the embarrassment, knowing that I dropped the microphone not only live on TV, but it was live to YouTube and all over space. If anybody had an RF signal, they could hear my dropping of the microphone and the panic of me trying to pick it back up. I had forgot about it like 3 months in. I stopped having nightmares about it late at night. And then one of the astronauts that I had never met because he was up in space when I started working there, he finally came back home, and we were all greeting him right before a show. And I introduced myself to him. He was like, "Hey, you're the one who dropped your mic." And I was like, "Oh my gosh. Like, is that what I'm going to be known for here, as the girl who dropped her mic live on TV?" And he was like, "No, it was the coolest mic drop in all of the galaxy." And I was like, "We're going to go with that." So that's the story behind that microphone. The type of live events we did. So this is a picture of basically a room kind of similar to this, where we had the folks at the front are astronauts that are getting ready to go to the space station, and you have the media, and sometimes they let the public in, and it's basically we're getting ready to go off to space, give us your questions, this is what the mission is going to look like, a briefing type of interview. This is another thing I did. So that's Katy Perry, and that's astronaut Peggy Whitson. And Katy Perry, this was actually shot for the MTV Music Awards. Well, I think it was the year that Katy Perry was hosting, and she did like this cool thing where with the Moon Man and all of that, and trying to get inspiration. So she wanted to interview Peggy Whitson while she was in space, and that's what this is from. So we also did events like that where it wasn't live to television, it was live to tape, and they used clips of this into the MTV Music Awards. This one here is a different type of event with me mixing. In that small corner there at the bottom, that's Brad Pitt talking to the space station, but Brad Pitt is in DC, I'm in Houston, and the astronaut obviously is in space. So that's one of the things where we would have to work with folks from other NASA centers. And like I would get their audio in, send it up to the space station, send the space station's audio back to them, and then take everybody's audio and send it out to TV. It's one of our more complicated events. This is another part of my job where I'm not in the control room exactly, but I'm capturing field audio. So on this particular day, we had Garth Brooks coming in to tour NASA, and that he was also going to speak to the astronauts. This is a picture of me basically capturing audio of him singing to the space station. So he pulled out his guitar and decided he wanted to sing to the space station. So I had to basically be tethered to the cameraman and also have my audio plugged into a board that they had there that the other audio engineer that was in the studio was going to send up to the space station, and then they'll send the audio back down. So at this one, I was just basically a walking microphone. And here's a different event that we were doing. This was for a Facebook Live. So I was capturing, I had mic'd up those two astronauts in the NBL, the giant swimming pool with a mock-up space station underneath. And in this event, I was taking in their audio and then pushing it into a phone to go out to Facebook Live and Instagram Live. So it just shows, like, when I tell people when you're an audio engineer at NASA, you're basically like a Swiss Army knife. Like, whatever they need audio is what you're going to have to be able to provide, which was really interesting. This is my setup that I had to do because at the time, Instagram Live didn't have like a way for you to go live without a cell phone. So, but we were trying to do the first ever live from space with Will Smith and an astronaut. So what I ended up having to do was take a phone, record the screen of the astronaut that's coming from their video camera down, and if you notice, it's a small old computer speaker to get his audio back and forth, and that's the audio and video that was going out. It worked. Instagram finally realized, like, oh, we want to be able to do these cool things, and now the audio engineer at NASA has a much easier job than I did. But yeah, that's pretty much what I did at NASA. Working in public service was really interesting, especially coming from a creative background. For me, I'm not very, I mean, I have on a nice jacket today, but that's not really my style. I was more of a t-shirt, jeans type of person. And it was even the joke that the building that I worked in at NASA is where the cool kids were because they weren't wearing suits and ties every single day. It's where you go to get on camera or you want to do something cool. Like we had interns that recorded a song there for their project that they were working on. And the astronauts, some of them who like being on camera love that place. The ones who don't like being on camera hate that building and they dread going there. But it was interesting to see having to switch my dynamics from working in a government agency where there are so many limitations on things that we can do. We kind of push the boundaries a little bit because NASA is trying to go younger, trying to include everyone this time around. With the emphasis on social media, with podcasting, with Facebook, Instagram, all of that, even Snapchat. There's a NASA Snapchat now. But at the same time, it's still a government organization. They're still, like, they couldn't get TikTok. So it's like there were so many checks and balances that had to be in place just for me to get, like, a microphone. I had to go through, like, 3 people just to get signed off for a microphone, where any other place, I would just go to like Guitar Center and go buy a mic. So that was really interesting. And after 6.5 years, there was other things that I wanted to do creatively. I mean, I love NASA, it was a great job, but I couldn't do those outside things because my schedule was so demanding. The way I describe my schedule is like, imagine Beyonce being on tour for 6 years straight. That's what basically it was for me, because even when I had days off, if anything happened on the space station, I had to go in. So when Hurricane Harvey happened, I had to go in, and I actually was stuck there for 2 weeks. That was not great. But yeah, so after leaving NASA, I decided I wanted to go work with YouTubers. So a complete switch. I left from working with government agencies to the folks who run up in your face in public and put a mic in your face. And that was really interesting. And then I went on and did some freelance work with U.S. Soccer because I'm a huge soccer fan. So I worked with the women's national team on their projects. And now I produce podcasts, which is great because it brings me back to me creating podcasts, creating a NASA's podcast, which stemmed from me having a long drive from the Woodlands to NASA Johnson Space Center every single day. And I was like, why don't we have a podcast or something that we can listen to? And then my boss was like, you should create our podcast. And I was like, oh, okay, that's how this works. And then, so we created that podcast. But then what I learned from creating that podcast, I was able to take with me to the private sector. And so now I work at a company that produces podcasts with Audible. I worked on Morgan Stanley's daily podcast. I'm working on a podcast now with some NFL giants. Like it's gonna be really cool. It doesn't come out till the fall, but I'm getting to work on other projects that I wouldn't have thought about working on a podcast had I not been at NASA, had I not had to make that long drive. So just being able to take something that I learned from working in public service to now work in the private sector, just let you know how, like, even though I've made these many different transitions, you can take something with you from each one of those places that you came from. So that's where I'm at now.
No, I was just going to ask you, out of all the transitions you made, which one's, I don't want to say was the most difficult, but I guess most challenging for you?
I would say that transition from a music studio to working at NASA. Because working at a place like NASA where there's so many protocols, you basically are, it's not military, but you're having to learn and be structured more like than when I worked in a music studio. I found my own clients. I booked my own time. When I wanted to go into work, that's when I went into work. NASA, the show is going to start with you or not. The space shuttle is going to go off. It's going to go up to space whether you're there or not, and you better be there. But yeah, and so it was mainly a structure thing, having to learn that. And then I would say even leaving NASA, then going back to doing freelance work, and now working at the job where I'm at now, where I work remotely, and I could work from wherever, that has been different because I'm went 6.5 years of working in a structured atmosphere to now it's like, it's a little bit more structured than working in a music studio, but it's not as every single day you have something to do. It's like today I didn't even have to call out of work because what I have to do is it's not due till tomorrow. So I can work on it anytime I pace tonight because the show that I'm working on this for doesn't come out to September. As long as we meet those monthly like deadlines, you can work at your own pace. So those types of transition, that mental mindset of creating your own schedule to someone else creating your schedule, that took a little bit of time to adjust to. Yeah.
What's the most difficult part of audio things?
So most people would think it's learning how to use the board or using all the gear. That is hard, but you can read that in the book. It's the things that you can't read in the book, the things that people can't tell you. It's the training of your ears to know what you're hearing, if it's going to sound good, if it's going to sound bad. And honestly, that just comes with time. Like I started training my ears when I was in college because each class was getting you to train your ears better and better. My ears now are a lot better than they were when I first started at NASA because I've experienced and learned, okay, if I put the mic this close to the speaker, it's going to feed back. If I hold the mic out this far, you're not going to be able to hear me. If I have it too close, it's going to overmodulate. And those things come with practice and just learning. So to me, that is the hardest part of mixing is training your ears. Yeah.
Any advice for someone going into your field?
I would say, and this is not even just my field, it's just in general, don't be afraid to fail. And I think like a lot of people are like, oh no, I made a mistake. But I know for me, working in live television, I even worked at some music festivals, it's gonna happen. You're gonna make mistakes. But if you like let that mistake snowball you, you're gonna have a bad show. So it's one of those things like, all right, I made a mistake, I gotta let it go. And there's a mental game that I used to play that my mentor taught me. He was like, give yourself a certain number of mistakes that you're gonna allow yourself to make during a live show. And then try to beat that. So I was like, okay, this show, I'm only gonna give myself 5 times to make a mistake. Which means, all right, I can now be a little bit more comfortable after I make my first mistake. I'm not going to start snowballing. Then what you'll notice is that your work gets better and it gets better. So taking that to just everyday life, anything you're trying to do, allow yourself to make mistakes. Everyone is human. We literally all bleed the same. Unless you're an alien, then I don't know, it might be blue. But nevertheless, you make those mistakes and use that as a way for you to learn from. You can learn from everything, the good things that you do, and then you, in my opinion, learn even better from the things that you made mistakes on.
I'm going to have a couple of questions as well. If you want to join me over here, come on. So, I want to just explore a little bit with you a couple of different things. One is, technically you were a bureaucrat, right? I mean, as we've talked about bureaucrats and how a lot of times public officials will kind of be like, oh, bureaucrats are trying to ruin your life. And I'm like, I don't think so, right? The audio engineer bringing you live sound from the space station is not trying to ruin your life, I don't think. But what do you think is, you mentioned NASA has developed social media, has live YouTube feeds, has this other stuff. What do you think is the role of social media and like these live opportunities in changing the way the public thinks about government agencies?
I think it depends on how they approach it. If they're approaching it as a truly educational standpoint, then I think it's fantastic. I think that's great because being able to have a spacewalk just not be on television, somebody can literally pull it up on their computer and watch it while they're at work. They can have it on their phone. They can, be laying down in their bed and just have it on an iPad or something. People who don't have access to many things can now get that access and view those things, dream those dreams of maybe becoming an astronaut. And I always said, I wasn't the type of person who ever wanted to work in government, but if I was, it would have been at a place like NASA. Just because of some of the principles that they have that I do agree with, which is education, which is allowing people to dream something bigger than themselves. Exploring is huge at NASA, and that's something that I like. I love adventures, I love exploring. So all those things that challenge us as a human race, not just an individual country, I think is fantastic.
Yeah, I think
I think it has added, if done right, which it seems like NASA has a better handle on, that I think it humanizes agencies in a way that makes people go, oh, no, this is like actual, like you can see the work they're doing, it's relatable, it's approachable, right? And I think that you hit right on it, right? This idea that like, oh, I can dream about becoming that person, I can dream about having this job. And by the way, in case any of y'all are interested, NASA does, not NASA, Lone Star does offer a degree in audiovisual technology. I just want to promote the college there a little bit. They pay my bills. So, but I want to also kind of hit on this idea about like you went to college for this thing and knew you wanted to do it. You clearly didn't imagine it would take you to NASA.
No.
How do you think, like, how did your education prep you, first of all? Just how did it make you ready skill set wise? But also, how did kind of just being open to kind of new ideas, new opportunities play into getting you where you are today? I don't want to just talk about NASA. You're successful beyond your NASA experience, right? That may be the cool kid thing, but
Yeah.
You're successful otherwise.
Yeah, so I think for me, the way that in most colleges, the way that the curriculum goes is where each class kind of builds upon the other class, right? And so that's really how I mapped my career. Every job is going to get me ready to get for the next job, whether I know it or not. Whether there's things in class that I really don't care about, like I forgot what class it was I took at Full Sail, but I was just like, this class has nothing to do with what I want to do. But I changed my mindset on that to like, I'm going to find something in this class, like maybe it's a homework assignment or something that I can apply it to what I want to do down the line. And that will make me like a mental adjustment to want to actually get through that class, actually want to do the work. I was like, I may not need this right now, but I know that this happens in the music studio, so I need to learn how to do this. I want to learn how to do this. And a lot of those times, it's like a mental adjustment. And so after, leaving from school and then transitioning to building off of that, I just took that same mental adjustment. There were things at NASA that I hated doing. I never wanted to do the paperwork side of things. I wanted to push spaders. But I knew doing that paperwork meant that I got to push spaders. So I was like, all right, the quicker I get done with this paperwork, the more I can go push spaders. And that's all I wanted to do. And then I took from learning how to do that paperwork side and to now being able to be associate producer, where most of my job is paperwork, writing scripts. So it just kept building upon it. I found something in it that I liked, that I could make it creative, and that's now what I do today, is where I'm creatively writing scripts for shows.
Wow. You did not say this, but it is all through your presentation, creative problem solving, right? You said, Instagram didn't have an option except for using your phone to do a live. And so, I mean, we saw your setup, right? You've got Will Smith and the space station here, and you've got a monitor here, and you've got an old speaker here, and you made it work, right? So what role do you think, not just in your field, but this kind of thinking differently, I mean, facing challenges, how much do you attribute that critical thinking and problem solving to your success now?
Yeah, I always tell people that 80% of my job as an audio engineer is troubleshooting.
Yeah.
So, and troubleshooting, honestly, is a soft skill that you can build over time. It's one of those things that you can learn. It's like, all right, I've been through this before. Here's how I came out at the last time. All right, let me try that first. And that's really what happens throughout everyone's lives. It's like, I've already seen that. I know that if I turn left on red, I might get hit. So maybe I'm just going to sit at this light this time. Your brain naturally does that. And so I just took that to heart. And then like when it comes to creatively thinking how to get out of stuff, me being a natural born creative and working in the creative industry, even from like job searching, I had to stop trying to look the traditional route of doing things. I was like, you're a creative. Why are you trying the traditional route of looking for a job that's creative? That's not very smart. That doesn't make sense. Like, that's not logical. So I was like, all right, well, I'm a creative looking for a creative job. So maybe I need to creatively look for that job. And that's when I started like, all right, well, this company works with this artist that I like, or they're working on this show that I like. So I'm going to go see what jobs do they have at this company that I can get that could potentially get me towards that show or working with that artist. And it's just those thinking outside of the box, things that not only will make you stand out once you do get that job, because one of the first questions they ask you, even on application, is how did you hear about us? When you do that, you make yourself stand out. You're not going the traditional route. They're like, okay, this person put some time and effort into this. This person thought outside the box, or they had a hilarious story of how they got here. And that makes you stand out among like the applications of like 300 people applying for the same job.
So you actually led into my next question, which was, you said, filling out thousands of applications to find a job. These folks are heading into that same arena where they're going to be applying for jobs. They're finishing their educations. They're potentially going into a market where a lot of people may be applying for a job. What is your suggestion as they kind of enter into the job market in that professional area? Now they're going to be certified or degreed, whatever. So what tips do you have for them on pursuing that career?
Yeah, so for the folks who traditionally, with my degree, would go off, they would usually get an internship, and then from there, they either work at that place or they use that internship to get a letter of recommendation to be able to work at a big studio. An internship was not financially great for me because most of those are either not paid or they're paid below minimum wage. And I was like, I can't. I basically spent 4 years in college doing an internship, so I really can't afford to keep doing this. And so my advice would be like, find the stepping stones. You may not be able to, not saying don't go for that dream job right away because you never know, always shoot your shot. But if you don't just give up. Find a smaller position that does something similar to what you want to do and use that as a stepping stone. Every job that I've done has led me to the next job, and I'm still not at my actual goal yet, but I'm getting one step closer. So even if you gotta take I was doing part-time AB work. That is not what I wanted to do at all. But I got to touch microphones. I got to plug in cables. I got to do some of the stuff that I like to do. And I took what I learned from doing part-time AB work and was able to use that to let NASA know that, hey, I can plug in cables. I can fix cables. I can set up speakers. I can do all that. And then also I went to school to mix. And so NASA's like, okay, so she knows how to troubleshoot things. She knows things inside and out. And then I took from NASA, all right, she knows how to mix live. She created a podcast and was able to take that. She created a podcast to the job that I'm working at now, where they're like, we're looking for someone who has worked with financial types of folks or folks of that stature, folks in the government for the work at Morgan Stanley on their show. I was like, oh, well, I've worked with scientists. Finance bros shouldn't be even more different than working with scientists and government officials. And because I created a podcast at NASA, I now have that time with a podcast and people of that stature, and that helped me get this job I have now.
In case y'all don't know, Morgan Stanley is a massive financial organization, one of the largest in the country. So, so I want to just approach. My aside there threw me a little bit. I want to approach a couple of things that maybe touch on their education experience. And one is, what was your greatest challenge educationally? And then two, what is maybe your best experience in the higher education?
My greatest challenge was showing up to do the hard things. And by the hard things, I mean, I didn't want to go to class that morning. I just didn't. Or I didn't want to do this homework assignment, or I don't really care about this project, so I don't want to do it. That was the most challenging part, was to figure out a way how I make this important to my mind. yes, it's important because it's on the curriculum and you need it to graduate, but to be realistic to you, you don't really care about it. So you got to change your mindset to make you find something to where you can care about what that is, so you can get through that class, so you can get through that project or that homework. And so that was the most challenging part, was constantly having to find something in a class that I did not care about to make me care about that class so I could graduate. And the best thing for me that in higher education for me personally, is that I love learning new things. And so being around on the campus that I was at, there were so many different campus activities that weren't exactly what I was into, but it got me a chance to meet new people, to see, hey, what is this degree program working on? Oh, that's cool. I'll go show up for this. I mean, while I was a student, I worked doing not audio, but like audience control for the WWE. Literally just because, oh, that's cool. I get to watch wrestling in person. All I got to do is show people to their seats. Great. I worked on a web series with film students. That's not something I really wanted to do, but it was cool to see how the film kids practice and learn. And those things helped me on those little small experiences where you're just going to go check out a club or something like that on campus. And you're like, oh, this is really neat. These kids work on this, or these students work on that. What you learn from that, you may not know it, but it may pop back up in your life somewhere down the line. And you may not have been an expert in it. You probably just went to it once or twice, but at least you have like a basis understanding of it.
That's all right. So I'm going to ask for some other questions, and then I'm hogging your time. Any questions that have popped up while you're listening and thinking about the future? Jacob, go ahead.
You said that you still haven't reached your end goal. What is your end goal?
That's funny. He touched on one of my next questions. So the question is, Alexandria said she hadn't gotten to her end goal yet. So what is the end goal?
So what
We're going to make you commit right here.
it seems like it.
Control all of sound.
That would be cool. But no, for me, I want to own my own production company.
Nice.
And the steps that I'm taking is, one, learning about production, two, working the different positions in production that I feel as though a great leader has worked all of those places, or they know people who have. And for me, I like to get my hands dirty. I like being hands-on. So I've went from an AV tech to someone that's actually mixing, to someone who's writing the scripts. And so I'm going through the steps of what I think I need to have a successful business in the production field.
That's awesome. Other questions? I know y'all got to have some. You got a fascinating person right in front of you, so come on. They're this way with me in class, too. Like, they don't want to raise their hand. Anybody? Go ahead.
So, from moving to the production field, what's the biggest thing you need to learn right now to be able to learn how to produce?
So the question is, in the production field, what's the biggest thing that you feel you need to learn to be a producer?
Let's see. I think it's allowing yourself to create without restraints. And that could apply for music production, television production, any type of production in a creative field, is don't stifle your creativity based off what you see the trend going to. Because you never know, you might be that trailblazer or that person who took a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and now you created something new. So just allowing yourself to like, all right, this sounds crazy that I just created, but let me just keep building off of that. There's projects that I worked on as a student that I go back to now. I kind of cringe because they sound terrible. But knowing what I know now, I'm able to go back, rework those things that I laid the basis on, and they sound great. And I've sold them off to people, and they've been used. But that's something that I created as a student, as a novice. And now, knowing what I do know now, I'm able to build off of that. I didn't have to come up with a new idea. I had already came up with that idea. I just perfected it. And so that's, from me, at the early stages, just creating something. Just continue to create. And as you create, it's going to get better. It's going to get easier because you just need to, the hardest part is starting. So once you get started, there you go.
That was a good question. Thank you. And a great response. What else? Any questions? Because I don't want to take all the time. So how did you go about finding an institution that matched your educational goals?
It was interesting because for what I wanted, there was not a lot of schools, one, that offered it. And the other ones that did offer it, I had to play an instrument, and I was just done. I was done with band. It was great. Don't get me wrong. I loved it. I love playing my instrument.
Any band folks in here that you were like, I'm done?
Yeah, I was just done. And then for students that loved music that were in band, when you would ask your band directors what you could do with that, they gave you two options: a musician or a band director. And I didn't want to be either one of those things. I was like, no, I don't want to teach anybody. I don't want to play this instrument, and I don't want to teach. So I had to be like, okay, what is it in music that I want to do? And I realized that it wasn't just music that I liked. It was audio in general. And by broadening it open to that, not just music only, then I was able to look across and see, all right, what is it that I want to do? Oh, I want to push the faders. Okay, great. So which schools allow you to push the faders? And the main school that popped up that everyone talks about when you say you want to go to school for music is Berkeley, College of Music in Boston. And so I was like, all right. I looked on there. I was like, oh, they have a recording engineering program. That's great. That's exactly what I want to do. Recording is what I want to do. Engineering makes my mom happy. So this is awesome. And and so I filled out it. I filled out for it. I told my band director, and he was like, oh, great. So which piece are you going to audition with? I was like, I'm sorry, what? And he was like, yeah, in order to get in Berkeley, you have to either sing or audition with your instrument. I was like, that defeats the entire purpose, because what I want to do does not involve me playing this instrument. So I was like really put off about that. And then I went to Boston in January, not very smart, did this audition, was like, I don't care if I get in or not. I'm not living here. I don't want to play my instrument. Trying to play a saxophone when you're freezing cold is the worst thing that you could possibly do. And so I didn't care about it in an audition. I was going home anyway, and I was not coming to this school. And I remember telling my mom on the drive back, I was like, yeah, I don't want to go here. She goes, oh, that's great. Thanks for telling me.
As you drove to Boston.
Yeah. And she's like, that's great. Thanks for telling me. She's like, okay, so what are you going to do next? And I remember coming back home, listening to, at the time, Pandora Radio, and I was like searching up other schools. And while I'm listening to Pandora Radio, I hear a Full Sail ad play in, and I was like, wait, what? And then I clicked on it, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Where is it at? Because I can't do another cold location. It's in Florida. I love Florida. It's right next to Disney. Oh, I can go to Disney on the weekends. I did not get to go to Disney on the weekends. But the idea of it was great. So I did one of those things where you like write in your email and your address. It's like seeing more information. I kid you not. Those folks called me like 2 hours later. It was weird. I was like, oh, y'all were just sitting there waiting. But
That set the hook.
yeah, they did. But I asked them on the phone. I was like, do I have to play an instrument? They're like, no. Why would you? I was like, thank you. Why would I? You get me. But yeah, that's how I narrowed down my search. And then I went there. They have like a behind the scenes tour that they do, which is great because basically what they do is they show you all the cool studios that you'll actually get to do class in. And then they'll show you the back lot where the film students are. They'll show you the arenas where now they have an esports team, so where the esports team practices and actually competes. And you see all the cool gadgets like that. And then like, of course you're gonna look at your parents and be like, I'm going here. I can't, this school is amazing. It looks like Victoria's high school in real life. This is the best place ever. And
Y'all, any Victorious folks out here? Yeah.
basically that's what the campus was, just like that school. It was crazy. And so I was like, I want to go to school here. And yeah, that's how I ended up going to Full Sail. They sold me. Honestly, I was wanting to go to school there after the guy told me I didn't have to play my instrument. I was good.
You were done. I think that you probably just got super relatable to a lot of folks when you're like, I wanted to make my mom happy, so I made sure to add this on. Anybody that connects, like, I want mama to be happy. Yep. So one of the things that we talk about in a government course is the jump that some people make, right? They get this career, they get a job in the government because they're very qualified. Obviously, you were good at what you did, even though you had like a super secret application process, like double secret probation process. You get this job, you're a government employee, so boo or whatever, and you're able to transition that into the private field. Can you talk about like how your work in government, and you've already touched on this, gave you a skill set that became even more marketable, made you more valuable in the private sector, and how it set you up for success?
I think the major thing is that NASA is going to look good on any resume that you have. So I kind of had a leg up. I was like, I might bum at this job, but I got hired at NASA. So getting another job somewhere else might actually be a cakewalk.
We don't talk about the bad part there.
Yeah.
I worked at NASA.
Yeah. Was I great? I don't know. But I was there. I earned a paycheck. I had a badge. So that was very nice to have on your resume. And then on top of that, just the fact that I held a security clearance. I've worked with high government officials and big celebrities at the same time. When I went to these other companies that say I worked for this one company that only worked with YouTubers, well, sometimes, I worked with Mr. Beast for like 3 months. Being able to like, oh, this person had enough security clearance to stand next to the Vice President of the United States. I think we're okay with them not sharing Mr. Beast's next video idea. That was just those small things like that about who I worked with, the type of projects that I worked on, made it more comfortable for companies. Like the job that I'm working right now, we're working on a show that doesn't come out till the fall, and we don't want it to be known publicly what it is, the name, or anything like that.
I know it's killing me.
Yeah, I can't.
To try to get you, but no. I know.
I don't want to spoil the surprise. You're going to love it. But
so when it drops, send us the link and we'll get it out there.
When it drops, I'll send you the link. But it's one of those things where the trust factor is already there because of having to hold like, not so much government secrets, but I had things that weren't able to be out to the public. And it's like, no, I'm not holding back on aliens or anything like that. It's just like, oh, I got to hear the astronaut talk to his wife, and I can't tell what they said. Or they were talking to their doctor, and he, was having a medical episode. I'm not going to go run to social media and be like, this guy has the flu on the space station, and he's getting everybody sick. Like, I'm not one of those people who would do one of those things. And so with me at the highest level having to be trusted with some things, working in the private sector, they're like, oh, well, Alex is good. If she can go stand next to the vice president, if she can work with the Pope, and she can talk to astronauts, then we're okay.
I love that when I did your intro and said vice president and Pope, and they're like, and then you said Mr. Beast, and that's all. I know what's important to y'all. Questions? Which vice president?
Both. I worked with Pence and Vice President Harris.
If you'll allow me one more thing, what was it like working with the Pope?
The Pope was fun. Actually, it was funny because they had like a translator for the Pope that was supposed to translate Italian to English, even though the astronaut he was talking to spoke Italian, but I think it was more or less for the actual public to understand. But then the Pope sits down and starts speaking English, and then like it throws everybody off. The translator's like, "Do I still get paid?" Like it was a lot. There was a lot of confusion going on, and I thought it was hilarious because by the Pope speaking English, that meant the astronaut was going to speak English. That means all I had to do was just push up 2 faders, and I was good to go. I was like, "Oh, this event
my job got way easier.
10 times easier. This is going to be a breeze."
That's a nice Pope surprise. All right, there was a question. Go ahead, sir.
First, what saxophone did you play? 'Cause I used to play.
Question is, what saxophone did you play?
Started out alto, and then tenor was really my main saxophone.
What's the best project you worked on?
What's
Oof.
the best part of your work?
The
Oh,
best
best project
project-
you worked on. Thank you.
That's hard.
Go ahead, pick your favorite famous person, and we'll make sure it's on video.
Yeah, I'm trying. I would say, honestly, and it's because I got to spend the whole day with them, was we had some of the cast members from, I think it was Star Wars Rogue One. And we had some of the cast members come to the Johnson Space Center, and they wanted to train like an astronaut for that day. And I got to hang out with them while they were training like an astronaut. And I think it was Kelly Marie Tran and I want to say Naomi. Yeah, I can't remember Naomi's last name, but it was like the two female characters. I got to like watch them get hooked up to the harnesses to pretend that they were in 0G gravity, like what the astronauts train in. And they're like practicing with lightsabers, attacking each other. It was the funniest thing.
That's
and then
amazing.
we got to get in the Mars rover simulator where they got to drive in one of our mock Mars rovers. And then I found out that they don't know how to drive. And so I was a little concerned that we're letting them drive and neither one of them had a license. So that was cool, sitting in the back of Mars rover with these two inexperienced drivers driving on top of this
Student
hill.
drivers in a Mars rover.
Yeah, and then like they did a thing where they were in the food lab, and I got to eat some of the astronaut food with them because that was part of the video. And then at the end of that, after capturing all that audio and video, I got to put it together with one of our video producers, and I actually got audio rights from Skywalker Sound, who owns like the lightsaber noises, all the original music, and I was able to put it into that video and use that for a YouTube product for NASA. And I think that entire process was just a lot of fun. I got to hang out with these two folks that I watched in movies, and I'm a big Star Wars fan.
I was gonna say Star Wars or Star Trek.
Both. But okay, if I'm being honest, it's Star Wars.
All right.
But Star Trek is cool. But it was really hanging out with them all day, and then getting all this cool, fun things that I got to actually be involved in, and then putting it together using actual Skywalker sound that, like, if you try to use that in a video without their permission, it's getting shut down. Like,
Right.
So I was like, oh, I have like access to their sound library, and this is so cool. And then like after that video went live on YouTube, the folks from Skywalker sent us, and from Star Wars companies sent us certificates where they named us all Jedis. And so I am technically a Jedi.
Dang.
And I think, honestly, that might be the coolest award I've ever.
Is that hanging above your degree?
That award is probably the only thing that is hanging. Everything else is in, like, boxes.
Yeah, that sounds right. That would be. So, questions, anybody else?
Is your Jedi certificate on your resume too?
Is
Yes.
your Jedi certificate
It's
on your
actually
resume?
on my work email. It has Alexandria, and then it has Jedi Wizard, and then and then it has my actual other job title. But I put that on there.
I like Jedi first.
Yeah, I had to make sure I had that there so they would know. Definitely priorities, because I had a nickname at NASA before I became a Jedi, where they would call me the Audio Wizard, and it was really funny because it like caught wind at other centers. So like I was in DC at NASA headquarters. They're like, "Oh, we were told the wizard was coming." I was like, "Wow, this is a thing." And so like I put the
No
wizard.
pressure. No pressure.
So I put the Audio Wizard underneath my name on my email signatures, and then once I became a Jedi, I changed to Jedi Audio Wizard because priorities.
I love it. Other questions, y'all? Anything else? So I think you have obviously just kind of blown my mind with all the things that you do. And, I hope that we've talked about like career opportunities that have opened you all up to like, here's other things. Like, this is a government job, y'all, government job. That you become a Jedi wizard while you work for the government. Who knew? But if you have, if you're that person that you're like, I don't know where I fit, I don't know where this is going to go, but I really love this thing, and you're like taking those classes that you don't necessarily want to take, but you're like, okay, I'm going to find something to like. I think that's a huge lesson for everybody today is, find something that you can relate to, something that you like. That makes it to where like, okay, I can have some interest in here. I have something that is valuable. I'm going to find some way to apply it. I just think that is something that we can all do, right? I hate doing paperwork just like you do. And, I love the interaction with my students, but that's part of it. So before we close, I want to give one last chance. Anybody? Last questions? Go.
Who's your favorite person you work with?
Favorite
that's
person you
not
worked
fair.
with? You can choose more than one.
Ooh, okay.
Top 5. This is like MySpace from back in the day.
All right, so top 5, in no particular order, just in case this gets out. Garth Brooks is up there because he thought that I thought his singing was terrible, but that's not the case. I was just really impressed. It would be, let's see.
I'm going to use that with students. Like if they look like they think the lesson's bad, I'm going to be like, it's actually because they're super impressed.
Yeah. Honestly, that picture I was showing was actually after that picture I showed. Afterwards, he was just like, was my singing that bad? I was like, no, I was just shocked that you sounded that good with this crappy microphone in this room. Like, that's the reason why I was looking so shocked. But, so let's see, Garth Brooks, Brad Pitt was a good one because Brad Pitt. Let's see, who else? Oh, the U.S. Women's National Soccer Team because, like, they win. Like, you want to be around winners. They were a really, really fun bunch.
I don't know if that counts as one.
It's
a whole team.
I work
we'll
with
count
the
it
whole
as
team,
one.
and they're like still active members, and I don't want to like single any of them out. But the entire team. Let's see. Blake Griffin, but I didn't exactly work with him hands on. But, like, I ran into him by accident, like, literally. Like,
As
he was coming
do.
around the corner. I ran into Blake Griffin, the basketball player. And then, so that was cool. And then I got to hang out with him that day because I ran into him, and the person who was showing him around NASA was like, oh, Alex, can you show him the audio control room? And then we just went everywhere. So that was fun. And then I would say the last one would be probably my favorite astronaut of all time, Peggy Whitson.
Nice.
Yeah.
And she was in one of the photos.
Yeah, she was in one of the photos. She holds the record for the most time in space for a woman. Or actually,
I think anybody.
Yeah, anybody now.
Yeah,
because
she
went
just
back.
said
She just
that.
went back up. So now it's for anybody. She's really, really funny in person. I've worked with her, like when I first started working at NASA, she was one of my first missions. And when I got ready to leave, she was literally my last mission, even though she had retired, but she was training to go back up as a private citizen. I think she likes space more than Earth. But, which I mean, I get it.
Fair.
But yeah, Peggy Whitson, really, really super cool. And like, just a great human being.
Yeah. And you, just since we're doing Women's History Month today, this is part of that Women's History Month. So not only does a woman hold the record for most time in space, a woman also now holds the record for most points ever scored in college basketball. So as of a couple of weeks ago. So any last things? Nobody asked what the astronaut food tasted like that you ate. So I'm sorry about that. It was mediocre. At best?
Spiceless. I see why they put hot sauce on everything up there in space now. It makes sense.
Yeah. So I am super grateful. I cannot tell you how grateful I am that you're here, that you made time for us today, that we got to share your experience. And let me ask real quick, would any of y'all want a picture with Alex before She leaves today. Okay. So if you don't mind, would that
Yeah.
be okay?
Yeah, that's
Sorry, I
fine.
didn't ask you first. I just presumed.
No, it's perfect.
You will take the picture now. No. But thank you so much for being here and sharing with us and, talking about your education experiences and talking about opportunities that people have that they haven't thought about as a government employee. So can we have a round of applause for our guest? Thank you so much.